The Boston Bruins are kicking off a 5-game homestand with a game tonight against the New York Islanders. Going to preview that matchup as well as update the Atlantic Division Power Rankings and the Eastern Conference playoff picture here on today's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Tuesday, December 13th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your day. The podcast is available on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. So please do hit that subscribe button so that you never miss a thing. If you're on Twitter, Instagram, you can find the podcast at Locked NHL Bruins, and you can find me, my dad jokes, and hockey tweets at Ian C. McLaren. All right, let's get into it, shall we? And tonight, the Boston Bruins are hosting the New York Islanders, a team currently holding down the second wildcard spot in the Eastern Conference. We'll talk about that more later in the show when we look at the Atlantic Division Power Rankings and the Eastern Conference playoff picture. The big matchup tonight will be in net without question, as two strong Vezina Trophy candidates likely to go head-to-head here in this one. I would imagine that it will be Linus Ullmark in net for the Boston Bruins once again. 16-1-0, a 177 goals against average, a 941 save percentage with 2 shutouts. Leads the NHL in wins, goals against average, save percentage, second in shutouts. Tied with the New York Islanders starting goaltender, Ilya Sorokin. He has not done as well in terms of overall record. He's 10-9 on the season with a 236 goals against average and a 925 save percentage. He also has 2 shutouts. So that should be a key matchup in this one and could decide the fate of this game, whoever is most on. Now, the Bruins, of course, are the top scoring team in the NHL, averaging 3.89 goals per game. They are the top defensive team in the NHL, 2.11 goals allowed per game. They're also top 3 in special teams. Number 1 penalty kill, 85.4%. 28.2 success rate on the power play, which is good for 3rd in the NHL. The 3.17 goals per game scored by the Islanders ranks them 15th. They're a bit better defensively. They rank 7th, allowing only 2.76 goals per game. Their top scorer over the past 5 games is Brock Nelson. He's got 3 goals, 5 points. Matt Barzal leads the way with 3 assists over his last 5 games. For the Bruins, it's David Pastrnak. He's got 5 goals, 6 points over his last 5 games. Charlie McAvoy with 4 assists over that span as well. These two teams have yet to play each other this season. Their next game will be in January, then another one in February. Bruins 7-2-1 over their last 10, where the Islanders are 6-4. Their last game was a 3-0 shutout loss to the Carolina Hurricanes. Before that, though, they beat the New Jersey Devils by a score of 6-4. So it should be a good one tonight as well. Let's be honest. Whenever the Islanders and Bruins play, it's not necessarily the most entertaining affairs. In fact, the Islanders, one of my least favorite teams to watch the Bruins play against. Not only because, well, more under Barry Trotz, they had a fairly low event style of hockey that's picked up a bit under their new bench boss. But we also get those tired old narratives in regards to Jake DeBrusk and Matt Barzal in terms of the 2015 draft. So far this season, though, Jake DeBrusk has been playing like a first-round pick at the NHL level, and he is on pace for 27 goals, 33 assists, and 61 points. That would be tying his career high in goals and smashing his career high in points, which is 43 set as a rookie. On the other end of things, Matt Barzal, he's only got 3 goals through 29 games so far, on pace for 8 goals through 82 games, but 76 assists, putting him on pace for 85 total points. Again, 2015 draft, pretty tired. The Bruins have moved on from Zach Senyshyn. Jakub Zboril can't get into the lineup at the moment. And Jake DeBrusk has panned out as a high-level player for the Boston Bruins, a first liner. And, he probably won't be a point-per-game guy throughout his career. But if he can hit the 30-goal mark, be like a 30-goal, 25-goal, 30-assist guy for his career, still pretty good value for where he was selected mid-first round. It's been it's going to be 8 years at the next NHL draft since those picks were made. So, I mean, you can debate it all day, but the Bruins, yeah, they fared well picking DeBrusk. Zboril properly rated. If you look back, he was projected to be picked where he was. Senyshyn, of course, was the way off the board pick that should not have been made. Barzal always seems to come up big against the Bruins, and I mean, yeah, he hasn't scored much this season. Watch him pot a couple tonight against the Boston Bruins. Before we get to the Atlantic Division power rankings and the Eastern Conference playoff picture, a quick word from today's sponsor, BetOnline, your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You can get all the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro and college football to basketball, the World Cup. They've got it all at betonline.net. They're the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info, and you can head to their website today or use your mobile device to learn more at BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, let's look at the Atlantic Division picture at the moment and update the power rankings there. Bit of a mix-up at the bottom right now as the Ottawa Senators, after going 6-3-1 over their last 10, including 2 straight wins, have managed to tie things up with the Buffalo Sabres. Both teams are 12, 14, and 2 for .464 point percentages. I'm going to give the Sabres the edge still, as they have a +6 goal differential, which is pretty rare for a last place team. If they had any semblance of even above average goaltending, they could be in the playoff picture or at least in the playoff race. They've scored 109 goals, which is actually more than the Bruins in one more game played, but they've allowed 103 as well, which is most in the division. So a very odd set of circumstances there for the Sabres. The Senators coming on a little bit. Now a -3 goal differential, so I'm still putting them in 8th, but some intrigue there at the bottom of the division. In 6th place, I'm putting the Florida Panthers. They have really struggled this season. They're 13, 12, and 4 for 30 points, which is tied with the Montreal Canadiens, but they've played one more game and therefore have a lower point percentage. Where they have an edge over Montreal is in goal differential. The Panthers are at an even 0, whereas the Montreal Canadiens are a -13. But given the Canadiens the edge because they picked up the win last night over the Calgary Flames, and they are higher than the Panthers in terms of point percentage. However, Florida's underlying numbers seem to be a bit more encouraging than Montreal's, than most, really. They're 3rd in the NHL when it comes to shot attempt differential, 5-on-5. Expected goal differential, they're 4th. And they're just not getting the scoring at 5-on-5. They're really lacking that depth scoring that they had last season. Jonathan Huberdeau is gone. Mackenzie Weegar's gone off the blue line. They're missing Anthony Duclair. Once he comes back in the lineup, perhaps they'll see a boost. But at the moment, they're kind of in danger of getting lost in the overall playoff picture, which we'll take a look at here in the Eastern Conference in a moment. So I'm putting Florida down in 6th, the Canadiens in 5th at the moment. The 4th place team is the Detroit Red Wings. They are 13-8-6 through 27 games, a .593 point percentage. And they are a -2 goal differential. If they could get completely healthy, they've been missing Tyler Bertuzzi for some time, Robbie Fabry, a lot of guys out of the lineup. Steve Yzerman has put together a decent club. Again, like we talked about last season, there was this big gap between the top 4 and the bottom 4. Detroit doing their best to eradicate that or narrow that gap. They're still not a bottom team, but they're still below even when it comes to goal differential, and their underlying numbers not really that strong either. In fact, they're 28th in the NHL shot attempt differential at 5-on-5, and when it comes to scoring chance differential, they are 29th. So they're not really creating much offensively. They've been really boosted by goaltending from Ville Husso, who was a pretty savvy pickup from Steve Yzerman back in the offseason. Top 3 teams, though, pretty clear at the moment. We have the Tampa Bay Lightning in 3rd. They're 17-9-1, 35 points, a .648 point percentage, and a +13 goal differential. Atop the division, the Toronto Maple Leafs have narrowed the gap in terms of total points. They're only 3 points back of the Bruins at the moment after going 8-0-2 over their past 10. However, they've played 2 more games than the Bruins. So the Bruins well ahead in terms of point percentage. The Bruins are at .833. They have a +48 goal differential, and they're 7-2-1 over their past 10, which was a pretty difficult stretch, included multiple games against Tampa, Vegas, Colorado. They're also 14-0-1 at home, which is where they will play their next 5 games against some fairly beatable opponents. The Bruins, again, they play the New York Islanders tonight at home. Then they will host the Los Angeles Kings, followed by the Columbus Blue Jackets, one of the worst teams in the Eastern Conference, on Saturday. The Florida Panthers on Monday, and then the Winnipeg Jets next Thursday. So those 2 games will be pretty tough. The next 3, certainly winnable for the Boston Bruins. When it comes to the underlying numbers in the Atlantic, the Bruins sit 5th in the NHL in shot attempt differential at 5-on-5. Only the Florida Panthers have a better number than them at the moment in terms of high danger shot attempts. The Bruins rank 2nd in the NHL, and scoring chances, they rank 4th. Again, Florida a bit higher than them. So it's kind of weird at the moment. The Bruins, clearly the class of the Atlantic. Maple Leafs surging a bit, but their underlying numbers aren't as strong as Boston's. They're not even as strong as Florida's, who could make a move here in the coming weeks if they can get some of that depth scoring that they benefited from last season. After the break here, going to take a look at the overall Eastern Conference playoff picture. I want to thank you first for making Locked On Bruins part of your day every day, free and available wherever you get podcasts. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, game recaps, and the take of the day, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. Overall, in the Eastern Conference, the Bruins still sitting ahead of the New Jersey Devils, who lost last night in overtime to the New York Rangers. They're 1 point up on New Jersey with a game in hand. Plus 48 goal differential, which is better than New Jersey's plus 36. The Devils well ahead of Pittsburgh, who's 2nd in the Metro. Carolina is 3rd. The wild card spots right now are held by 2 New York area teams in the Rangers and the Islanders. The Red Wings, 2 points back of the Islanders for the 2nd wild card spot. Montreal, Florida, 4 points back. Crazy to see Montreal that close. Even the Senators and the Sabres are 8 points back of those 2 teams, of the Islanders. So sort of making things interesting. Again, the loser point in the NHL makes things a bit tighter than they probably should be. And that's why we're seeing some teams still kicking around when perhaps they shouldn't be in the playoff picture. Now, the trade deadline is coming up not until March, but there's one name on the market that I believe the Bruins should do whatever they can to acquire, and that would be Bo Horvat from the Vancouver Canucks. Apparently, he rejected a contract offer from the team. He's their current captain, 27 years old, and the Canucks are focused on the trade market between now and March 3rd, according to Pierre Lebrun of TSN. He can become an unrestricted free agent in July. He's coming off a 6-year deal with an average annual value of $5.5 million. And let's say this is the last season for Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci in black and gold. Bo Horvat would be a fantastic addition down the middle for the Boston Bruins. As would a guy like Dylan Strome, who you heard me talk about a lot last season. Being able to bring those 2 guys in to replace Krejci and Bergeron would be huge, and hopefully would convince David Pastrnak that he's still going to have some guys to play with, and that the Bruins will remain serious about winning after those guys have moved on. That's a discussion for another day in terms of Pastrnak, the future, even the trade deadline, but that's definitely a name to keep an eye on and someone who would fit in surprisingly well with the Boston Bruins, I believe. You'd have to try to move Charlie Coyle, perhaps, which might disrupt some things. You wouldn't want to have Bergeron, Krejci, Coyle, Horvat, Zacha. Something might have to give there. Coyle, I believe, has a no move protection on his contract. Right. He has a no movement clause and a modified no trade clause. He can submit a 8-team no trade list from 2022 to 2025. So that's not likely to happen, but that would be a fantastic addition. And acquiring Bo Horvat would give you negotiating rights heading into free agency. Anyway, something to keep in mind. That's it for today's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins. Thank you so much for joining me here today on the show. Looking forward to tonight's game against the Islanders. And on tomorrow's podcast, we'll recap that game. Open up the mailbag. If you have any questions, please send them to @LockedNHLBruins or @IanC.McLaren on Twitter. And hope you're all having a great week. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And we'll talk to you again here tomorrow on Locked On Boston Bruins.